Hey wingfoilers, welcome to West Coast Wingfoil, a channel where I share tips, tutorials, and reviews about everything wingfoil related. I've created a lot of tutorials about specific key skills for beginner and progressing riders, but I wanted to create a complete beginner's guide for learning how to foil. In this video, I'm going to break down the full progression and techniques to learn from your first session to your 10th to 15th session. I've included lots of pro tips that I wish I knew when I was starting out that are going to expedite your learning curve to get you foiling and progressing a lot faster. So let's dive into it and let's learn how to foil. When you're learning to wingfoil, there's a general rule for how long it's probably going to take you to pass the key hurdles along your learning journey. This is just a rough guide, and this definitely can vary from rider to rider. You can expect to take about 1 to 3 sessions to just get up on your foil. 7 sessions to start feeling comfortable riding your foil for extended durations, and another 5 to 10 sessions to start learning how to jibe or change directions without falling off your board. So this sport really takes a minimum of 20 sessions to become a comfortable rider and actually experience wingfoiling. When people are interested in learning how to foil, they often ask what experience they need, if any, to learn how to foil. It's definitely going to be easier to learn if you have some kind of experience on a board, but the real advantage only shows up for people who have experience on a foil, whether that's behind a boat, kite foiling, or windsurf foiling. By far, the most challenging part about learning how to foil is just riding the foil itself. Before I went wingfoiling, I took my board and foil out, and I did a few sessions being pulled behind a boat. I thought my years of board experience was going to make it super easy for me, but I was extremely mistaken. I think going behind a boat really helped me understand how the foil works, and after just 2 sessions, I felt like I really had a strong understanding about how the foil reacts to different pressure points. Some people think it's very different being pulled behind a boat compared to wingfoiling, but I think getting the feel of how the foil reacts being behind the boat and getting more experience just having practice trying to get up on foil really helped me. Tons of people learn to wingfoil without a boat, so if you don't have access to a boat, don't worry, you can just get out on your wingfoil setup and start your progression that way. The first really important thing to learn when you start wingfoiling is what gear you need to buy. This is a sport where gear matters, and if you don't have the right gear for your size, conditions, and riding preferences, it's going to completely slow down your learning curve or make it completely impossible to even get going on your board. Let's break down the key gear needed for wingfoiling and the important things to consider to make sure that your gear is right for you. The first piece of gear that you're going to need is your wingfoil board. There are lots of different brands, shapes, and sizes, but the most important thing that you're going to want to look for when you're buying a board is the board's volume. A big board is essential for anyone learning how to wingfoil. It's going to be more stable in the water, allow you to stand on it much easier, and actually have a chance for you to learn the techniques to wingfoil. So many people buy a board that's a bit smaller, thinking that they'll just be able to grow into it. You think you may struggle a bit at the beginning, but then you'll be able to get through it and you'll have a board that's going to last you a lot longer. Oftentimes, people who go in with this mentality and buy a smaller board can't even stand up. They can't learn to wingfoil because they can't even stand on the board to start learning. When you're starting out, you definitely want to get a board that's going to hold your weight so you can stand on it comfortably in the water. A common rule of thumb to follow is to take your weight in kilograms and add 40 to that number. That will give you the volume of board that you should get when you're starting out. So I'm about a 75 kilogram rider. I'll add 40 to that number, and that's going to tell me that I should get a 115 liter board when I'm starting out. I actually started on a board that was slightly bigger at around 125 liters, and that really helped me get going a lot quicker than if I'd gotten a smaller board. So the bigger your board, the easier it will be to learn and advance. The drawback for a bigger board is that once you're riding comfortably, it's going to be a bit slower and more difficult to maneuver, but I can't stress it enough. Do not take the shortcut with board size when you're learning. Get a board that's at least your weight plus 40 to ensure that you're spending time learning on your board and less time practicing swimming in the water on your first few sessions. The next piece of gear that's very important is your wing. Brand is important, and I'll get into that in a second, but the size is the main thing that you're going to want to consider. The size of your wing that you get will depend on your body size and the conditions that you're riding in. The stronger the wind is blowing, the smaller your wing needs to be to propel you forward. Wing sizes come between 2.5 meters for really strong winds to 7 meters for really light winds. Advanced riders typically have 3 different wing sizes to cover the full wind range. When I started out, I only wanted to get one wing that would cover as much of the wind range as possible. If you want to start with one wing, then I suggest getting a 5-meter wing or a 4-meter wing, depending on your size. If you're 155 pounds or 70 kilograms or more, get a 5-meter wing. If you're less than 155 pounds, get a 4-meter wing. This will cover you for most of the rideable wind ranges to start, but wind speed can move this number around quite a bit. I'm around 75 kilograms and I bought a 5-meter wing. This is a great size wing for anything around 15 to 25 knots. Anything more than 25 knots, I'd definitely rather be on a smaller wing. You can get away with riding a bigger wing in windier conditions. You're just going to be a lot more overpowered and the wing will be a lot harder to control. Once you have your wing size or know your wing size, there is some important brand considerations. Wing technology has been moving really fast. There is really only one wing that I'd recommend, and that's the Ocean Rodeo Alula wing. You can take a look at this wing at our website, westcoastwingfoil.com. The Ocean Rodeo Alula wing is 40% lighter than comparable brands. This means that your wing is going to be easier to maneuver, hold above your head, and fly in lighter wind conditions. It's really important to buy a brand that you trust because a lot of brands who claim to have light wings are actually not durable and they may come apart on you. I'll make sure to update the #1 wing pick at westcoastwingfoil.com, so make sure to check it out before you buy your wing. The next piece of gear, which is extremely important, is your foil. I have a full video on choosing the right foil, but the main piece of advice that you need to know is to pick a foil that has a large surface area and a foil that you can grow into. Foils have a front wing and a rear stabilizer. These can be replaced. So when you want to buy a foil, you want to buy one that has options that you can progress into as you improve. The best starter foil I always recommend is F4's Starter Pack. It comes with a large front wing, which is ideal for learning. It also includes a second front wing that is a bit smaller that you can progress towards. The price of this package is cheaper than a lot of foils that just come with one wing, and F4 makes quality foils, so you don't have to worry about that. Visit westcoastwingfoil.com if you guys want to see more details about this foil and get a link to where you can get one. The last thing I wanted to touch on when it comes to gear are accessories. I recommend every wing foiler wears a helmet and impact vest when they ride. People can take some nasty falls when they're learning to foil, and having these two things can really prevent some serious injuries. I also recommend wearing booties if you do have them, even if you're riding in a warmer climate. The most common injury from your foil is to actually just catch your foot on the sharp edges from the foil, and booties can actually protect you from this common injury. You can visit westcoastwingfoil.com to check out all my recommended accessories for wing foiling. So before we dive in and start talking about your first session, I wanted to quickly go over some important points about wind speed and conditions that you're riding in. The sweet spot when it comes to wind speed for beginners is around 15 to 17 knots. This is going to be enough wind to make it easy to get up on foil, but not too much that's going to blow you all over the place or intimidate you. I don't suggest going out at anything less than 15 knots when you're learning. It's extremely difficult getting up on foil on anything below 15 knots when you're learning to wing foil. You'll most likely be spending most of your time falling into the water or just sitting on your board. If it's a bit windier, that's totally okay. It's actually much easier to get up on foil in windier conditions, so I'd suggest going out in that 15 to 17 knot range, or if it's a bit windier, totally okay. Feel free to give that a try. The other important thing to look at is your wind direction. The ideal wind direction is going to be cross shore. This allows you to travel out away from the beach and back to the beach with relative ease. When you get blown downwind, you should be able to get to the shore relatively easily where you can carry your gear back upwind and start the process all over again. Never go out in offshore wind when you're starting out. Getting blown out to sea can be very dangerous, and it can be quite difficult to get back to shore. Onshore wind is also really challenging, especially when you're learning, because you're probably just going to get blown into the shallow water where your foil will bottom out or get grounded. Look for those cross-shore winds or semi-cross-shore wind directions for the best conditions to learn in. Before you get into the water on your first session, it's helpful to do some training on the beach just to get familiar with your gear and the wind. If the conditions aren't optimal, you can always just spend some time training on the beach, which is really going to help you when you do get on the water. Practicing using your wing on the beach can really help you improve. When you have your wing up, feel that wind window, practice maneuvering your wing in the wind, and get a sense of where the different balance points are and how you will be holding it. You can also practice angling your body to get a feel for the angle of attack that you want to aim for when you're cutting upwind. Once you feel comfortable handling your wing, you can hit the water and officially start your first session. From your first session to your third session, you're probably going to struggle. It's good to go in with that expectation so you don't get too discouraged when you're out there. Wing foiling is a tough sport to learn, but when you stick with it and get that feeling of flying on your foil, it makes it so much more rewarding. In your first few sessions, the main thing that you're going to be learning is getting up on your board and falling safely. You may be able to start getting a bit of the feel flying on the water with the foil, but it's not uncommon to go 1, 2, or even 3 sessions not getting up on foil at all. So I wanted to show you guys what my first and second foil session looked like. This is footage from my first foil session after going out on the boat a few times. Anyone who wants to skip ahead, I'll put a timestamp in the video if you want to skip ahead to more of the tips, but this is for anyone who wants to see what a first session can actually look like. So basically, I carried my foil into the water, and even learning to carry your foil properly can be challenging, so that's definitely something that you guys want to look at, and I do have other tutorial videos showing you on how to carry your gear. Basically, I had played with my wing a little bit on the beach, but this was one of my first times kind of using it on the water, and it definitely feels awkward. It feels awkward just managing your board, your wing, and keeping everything kind of organized and not having your leash of your wing and your leash of your board just kind of tangle around you. So right here, I'm just on my board, not getting up on foil at all, and just learning how to move myself forward across the wind window in one direction. Right now I'm going with my strong foot forward, my left foot forward. And there were a lot of these moments where I just fell in when I almost would get up on foil because it just felt so awkward. There's almost this roll effect that you're not used to, that I wasn't used to from other board sports. Here I'm going in the other direction. It definitely felt a lot more difficult going with my right foot forward, lots of fall-ins from trying to go that direction, but was able to make progress moving across the wind window, just mainly on my board. Now, learning to just get up on your board like I am here is definitely something that's a bit challenging depending on the size of your board. So this is why I always recommend getting a bigger board. My board I could stand on, but it always helps to get some forward momentum because that's going to make your board stable. Now, here's the first time where I think I actually got up on foil wing foiling. So this feeling is super incredible, and I'm just loving it and pretty shocked that I actually got up on this session, getting up on foil. And once I was here, because I had some experience riding behind the boat on my foil, I was pretty comfortable actually riding the foil. If you hadn't ever been up on foil, you're probably not going to get as long a ride as this, but you never know. Depending on how you feel on your foil, you might be able to experience some success. Now, the wind was pretty light. As you can see, there's not a ton of ripples on the water. So I did drop down off of my foil quite a bit, where I had to then learn how to get back up on the foil. And the hardest part about foiling, especially when you're starting out, is getting from your board up onto your foil. Once you're there and you learn how to ride your foil, it's a lot less difficult than it is coming down back onto the water and then trying to get back up again. So I had several rides actually getting up on foil, mainly with my strong leg in front. Didn't have a ton of success going in the other direction, but hopefully this gives you guys a sense of what you could look like if you go out on foil for your first and second session. One thing I did want to emphasize is I did have experience going behind the boat. If you don't go out behind your boat, you're probably going to be down on your board a little bit more because you're not going to be as comfortable on the foil, but hopefully this gives you guys a sense of what it could look like. Let's talk about getting on your board and some effective techniques that you can use. The first part is your position. When you're ready to go, you want to have the wind at your back and your board in front of you at a 90-degree angle to the wind. And then you have your wing on the downside of your board. You can then get on your board and work on getting to a kneeling position facing in the direction that you want to go. A great tip through the process of getting up is to use your wing for balance. At any time when you feel unstable or feel like you may fall in, pin your wing to the water and lean on the leading edge like a tripod to help you stabilize. You should have a board that you can stand on, so you'll be working to get to your feet and start catching wind with your wing to help you start moving forward. Forward momentum will help stabilize your board, so you want to start catching wind as quick as possible. As you progress, you can also start trying the knee start. Here, you'll start catching wind from your knees to build some momentum. Then you'll plant your front foot and pull yourself up using your wing and the wind to get up. If there's enough wind, you should start to feel yourself lift up onto your foil when you lean back a bit on your board. I'm going to talk about some effective pumping tricks to help get you up on foil shortly. But first, I want to talk about falling. Foils are sharp, and the main thing that you want to avoid is falling onto your foil. The best thing to remember to avoid falling onto your foil is to go with your momentum. If you're getting pulled forward and you feel like you're going down, try to jump forward to add some clearance between yourself and your foil. The most common reason people land on their foil and get hurt is because they're trying to save a fall. You'll be going down and you'll try to compensate in the other direction, and that's when you can get hurt. When you're starting out, embrace the falls and go with your momentum. That'll help you get some extra space between yourself and your foil, and then you can't get hurt. After 1 to 3 sessions, you should be pretty comfortable getting up on your board, standing up, maneuvering your wing, and you should hopefully have had some experience riding on your foil. Between your 4th and 5th session is when it normally really clicks for riders if you have the right gear and are going out in the right riding conditions. Now you can start honing in your techniques for getting up on foil and starting to build your skills riding on foil. So I wanted to give you guys a quick little example of what my 6th session looked like. This is, I believe, my 6th session going out wing foiling, and here I am. Just even you can tell right off the bat, I'm better at even carrying my setup to the water. And this is something that a lot of people overlook, but basically carrying your wing and your foil and your board to the water, especially if you have a far walk, which at Jericho, where I'm going here, there is quite a far walk when the tide is out to get to the water. It is pretty challenging just carrying your setup there. So here on my 6th session, I'm pretty comfortable getting to my knees, and I've got a really big board, so I can actually stand up on my board without the use of my wing or getting pulled by the wind. But great to practice the knee start, so I got a bit of momentum from the wind, and then jumped up from my knees to my feet, and here I'm just doing slow scoops to build my momentum and make my board more stable, and then I start pumping my arms and my legs a little bit more to jump up on foil. And that looked pretty easy. That was my first time on this session going up onto my foil, and definitely look pretty confident getting up on foil. I do have a big foil and I'm on my strong leg forward, and you're going to see later when you go on your weak leg forward, or when I went on my weak leg forward, I'm much less comfortable. So here I look pretty stable. I am cutting upwind, and I'm able to generate a relative decent amount of speed. But I definitely had a lot of times where I'd lose concentration, like here, and nose dives, or I get too high on my foil, and then I go down. So, but again, here's another example of me getting up onto my foil. The wind's probably blowing around 15 to 17 knots. Don't see too many whitecaps on the water, but even with this relatively low wind speed, I have a really big front wing on my foil, a nice big board for stability, and based on my weight, my 5-meter wing is plenty of power to get me up easily onto foil now that I have the skills in order to do that. So this was my 6th session, and I actually even started trying to do some jibes, and I fell down a lot, but this is an example where I actually did a lot better even than I thought that I was going to do at the time. I got all the way around on my turn, and I even got to ride toe edge a little bit, but I was super uncomfortable on the toe edge side, and that's when I went down. Now, here's that jibe again, and what I should have done is after I started my turn, everything's looking good, but then when I come around, after I got all the way around, completed that turn, this is when I should have dropped off foil onto my board to complete a foot switch, and then try to maintain a bit of speed to get back up on foil with that momentum. Coming around onto your toe edge and riding toe edge, super hard when you're starting out. And then as you can see here, I'm not very comfortable riding on my opposite side. I'm naturally left foot forward. Here I'm riding right foot forward, and you can see my back legs kind of all over the place. I don't look comfortable, and here I go down because my weight was just totally off. So 6th session, relatively comfortable riding with my strong leg forward, but the riding with my less comfortable foot forward was much more difficult, and as you can see, a lot more difficult for me to actually get up on foil too. It takes me a lot longer. I look a lot less comfortable, and here I'm riding with some waves. There, you can't really tell in the video, but there was a bit of wind chop which helped me get up on foil on my weaker side. Had there not been that chop, I think it would have been even more difficult for me to get up on foil. But I'm all over the place when it comes to the mast height out of the water, and I really am just trying to survive to an extent, but still can ride for extended periods of time, just not quite as comfortable as my stronger leg. So that's just a little showcase of what a 6th session would look like for those of you that were interested. And now I'm going to move ahead and get back into the instructional part of the video. When you're up on foil, it takes way less energy to propel you forward in the water. If the wind isn't strong, it can be difficult to get up and get going on foil, but once you're there, it's way easier to stay up on foil and go faster in the water. To master getting up on foil effectively, you want to focus on 2 things: pumping your wing and pumping your board. When it comes to pumping your wing, the key thing you're trying to achieve is to give you a stronger forward surge compared to what the wind is providing. You want to propel yourself forward and add additional lift to make you lighter on your board. A lot of people see wing foilers shaking their wing like crazy to help them get up and get going on foil. Instead of just shaking your wing back and forth, you want to translate your motion into more of a scooping movement. This scooping motion creates a nice, strong, and longer power stroke, maximizing the amount of force that you're generating from your wing in the wind. The scoop also allows a much smoother reset of your wing, minimizing the counterforce against your wing when you're resetting to that original position. So that's pumping your hand wing. Along with pumping your hand wing, you're going to want to learn to pump your board. Pumping your board does two key things. It activates your foil under the water so it can climb out of the water, and it releases the surface tension that acts like a suction between your board and the water. A common mistake people make is to just lean back on their board to try to get lift on your foil. Leaning back does help you get lift, but what happens if you lean back too early is that you can stall out your foil and you'll just fall back down onto your board before you actually get going on foil. If you're out on a windy day, you can just lean back and your foil should activate because there's enough force from the wind to get you up and get you going. If that's not working for you, then you're going to need to activate your foil by pumping. To do this, you want to actually get your weight a bit forward. I'll physically move my back leg forward on my board, narrowing my stance, and what I'm trying to do is activate my front wing under the water. I'm trying to put pressure on my front wing of my foil to make it climb out of the water like a Stairmaster. So what I'm doing is putting pressure on the front of my board and I'm pumping my legs. Sometimes it will only take a few pumps to get going, and sometimes it can take 10 to 20 pumps. When you combine the pumping of your hand wing with the pumping of your legs, it's a really powerful way to get up on foil, gain more efficiency, and unlock the benefits of less drag and less resistance when you're riding on your foil. There are two big pro tips that I have for anyone working on getting up on foil. The first is to wait for the gust. If the wind is not strong, look at the water, and oftentimes you can see the fronts approaching. It almost looks like there's these ripples on the water that are flowing in the direction of the wind. If you wait for one of these gusts, it's going to be a lot easier to get you up instead of pumping like crazy when you're in a wind lull. The second pro tip is to be patient. Your technique is not going to be perfect right out of the gate. Learning to foil is all about time spent on the water, so even if you go out and don't find that you're having much success, I guarantee you are building your skills, and the next time that you go out, you're going to have a much better time. I've gone out so many times and had the wind die on me and just had a total failure of a session. This happens to everyone, and it's all part of the sport. By your fourth or fifth session, you should be pretty comfortable getting up on foil, and you should start to get longer rides in up on your foil. The main thing that you're trying to do when you're riding on foil is to get upwind. When you start, it's easier to get up if you point your board directly across the wind or even slightly downwind. Then, as you get going on foil, you can start pointing more upwind. A common mistake riders fall into is riding too high on their mast and having their board really high out of the water. What can happen is your front wing can actually breach the water, and the result is your board nosediving and you coming off the front. This is going to happen to you a lot when you're learning to foil, so get used to it, but there is ways that you can try to avoid it. You want to try to learn to control your weight and ride smoothly with your weight balanced and the water line being around the middle of your mast. This just takes time to master, and as you get more riding in, you'll get a better feel for controlling your height on the foil and finding a comfortable level that you can ride at. You can play around with the placement of your foil on your foil board to adjust the balance point of where you're standing. Moving your foil back in the foil tracks will result in less lift but allow you to go a bit faster without having to lean back when you're riding. Moving your foil forward on the board will result in more lift and will move your balance point a bit forward on your board when you're riding on foil. Once you can ride relatively comfortably and, more importantly, have mastered getting up on foil, this is actually the time when you can consider going to a smaller board. You definitely don't have to do this, and it's going to make it harder for you to get up on foil, so don't rush into getting a smaller board. But when you do go to a smaller board, you will have something that's a bit more responsive, and it'll be easier to maneuver when you're riding. I upgraded to my Roberts foil board on my 10th session. The amazing thing about the board that I got was not only was it smaller, which made it more agile on the water, but it was also way lighter, which made it easier to get up on foil. Now, just to clarify, it was harder to balance on because it's a smaller board, but if you're good at your knee start, you can generate some forward momentum, and then getting up onto your feet, it's not going to be as wobbly in the water. So practicing balancing on a lighter board will really help you to get up. My Roberts board was also wider, which makes it more stable on the water, relatively speaking, even though it has less volume. The other big advantage was that because of the design, it had way better touchdowns if I did drop down onto my board while I was riding. It'll redirect me back up. Roberts boards are definitely more expensive than production boards, but you get better materials, which means the board will be super strong and super stiff. You also get their innovative foil track designs, which is way easier for setup and takedown of your foil, just sliding them in and out of the rear entry tracks. If you do want to support him, make sure to visit westcoastwingfoil.com to see all the amazing shapes and colors that they offer on their wingfoil boards. The last thing I wanted to go over in this beginner's guide is learning to jibe. Jibing on a wingfoil is when you're riding in one direction and you turn your board downwind 180 degrees to ride in the opposite direction without falling off your board or touching your board to the water. When you learn to jibe, it's amazing how much easier it is to stay upwind and how much more energy you save from not falling into the water each time you try to turn or change directions. I just wanted to provide some really basic early jibing tips for beginners because jibing is definitely a more advanced skill, and I actually have a more detailed video specifically on jibing. So once you get to that level, make sure to check out my jibing video at westcoastwingfoil.com. Jibing takes a long time to master, so have lots of patience. When you're starting out, I suggest trying to do what I call a half jibe. Try and complete your turn staying up on foil, and just after you've turned around, you can land your board onto the water before you do your foot switch. The hardest part about jibing is getting used to transferring your weight from one edge of your board to the other smoothly. The best tip that I got when I was learning to jibe was to not rush that turn. Give yourself plenty of time to ride downwind to get your weight balanced, and then slowly transfer your weight and complete your turn. As you get more comfortable, you can start tightening your turn radius. The foot switch also causes a lot of crashes and takes time to master. On a very high level, you'll complete your turn, lean back to start traveling higher up on your mast, and then you'll move your back foot to your front of your board and your front foot to the back of your board to complete the foot switch. A pro tip is to sneak your feet closer together before doing the foot switch so your weight is distributed more evenly on your board and your feet have less distance to travel. So I wanted to show you guys my attempt at jibing once I got comfortable at actually getting around and having more success getting around, just so you could see what the progression looks like. Here, I'm still not quite ready to do my jibing, so you'll see when I try to get around on my turn, it just doesn't even really make it around. My weight was off, my hands were off, just really didn't come together. Here's another session where the wind is blowing a little bit stronger, which makes it easier to get around in your jibe. So it requires less efficiency to actually pull you around. So I obviously had a lot of failures, as I'm showing you here, where I just wasn't really getting around. My weight was off, I was falling off my foil. But then I started kind of building that traction and starting getting more comfortable with what the turn felt like. My hands are looking a lot better. I'm staying on my foil. I'm rushing less, but I'm actually getting all the way around onto the turn. And then when I'm on toe side, you can see that's when things go a little bit haywire. So here's another example of going from my strong side, then flipping to toe edge, looking really good here, and then I had a little bit touchdown that threw my weight off, and then I'm really awkward riding toe side. I don't have my wing in a strong position. I'm actually trying to go too far upwind, it looked like, which caused me to kind of stall out there. Here I come in at a nice level of my mast, come right around, and then I'm falling apart here, but actually managed to hold on by just riding it out downwind and not forcing that turn too early. And then I do ride out toe side pretty decently here, and this looks like a much better position. Here's a little fast forward into after me riding toe side, then I do touch down, and that causes me to wipe out. The nice thing about when you get a bit better is you're able to have a lot longer rides, which means you're going to have a lot more opportunity to turn. So here I've started my turn, but things just went, again, a little bit south. I stayed angling downwind until I regained my balance, and then I completed my turn and actually survived a relatively bad looking turn. Then I actually go down. And this one, I come in with some nice speed. Turn's looking good. Nice and smooth, don't rush it, but have a nice smooth transition onto that toe side, and that one looked really good. So this one, I'm riding in at a good level on my mast. Start the turn with a good weight distribution, get the hands going, don't rush it, and it looks like I get around pretty cleanly here, so that was a really good overall job. So what I'm actually doing is I'm not doing a foot switch, and I'm staying riding on my toe side to get practice riding on that toe side, and then when it's time to take that turn again, I'm able to actually turn a lot more easily. Now, it's not easy off the bat. As you can see here, this is one of my first attempts trying to go from a toe side into that heel edge, and it did not go very well. The main problem there was actually my hands. I wasn't able to switch my hands along my wing to get power to keep propelling me forward. Here, I'm traveling goofy or right foot forward, also my off leg, and I'll try it again, and everything's okay up until about halfway through the turn, and then my balance is the big problem. It just gets totally off, and it's hard to coordinate moving your hands at the same time as adjusting your balance on your board. So here I am coming in for another attempt. I have my wrong foot forward or my opposite leg forward, standing goofy stance, and then I'm going to start my turn. Everything looks okay, but you can see I'm fumbling a lot with my hands, and then it's hard to coordinate trying to adjust your hands at the same time as move your balancing point as you adjust that turn. So that's a lot more difficult to go from your off leg to your strong side, or go from your off leg still riding toe side on that off leg. What's going to be a lot easier when you're learning to jibe and once you're more comfortable going riding up on your foil is going from your strong leg forward and then going into your jibe onto your toe side, keeping that strong leg forward. And I definitely found that it's good to learn that toe edge. So once you come around on your jibe, you can practice that foot switch. I said you could drop your board onto the water, get off foil, practice a foot switch, but I really liked working on my toe edge so that I could kind of keep going, and then once I got better, I would be able to ride much easier and much more efficiently with my strong leg forward on my toe edge, and then that jibe coming from what normally would be an uncomfortable position would be a lot easier because you could just flip yourself around and go from riding with your strong foot forward on your toe edge to your strong foot forward on your heel edge. That's the basics on jibing, but if you are at a level where you're ready to master the jibe, make sure to check out the full video at westcoastwingfoil.com. Once you get to this point, you're officially an intermediate wingfoiler and you have conquered one of the most challenging sports to learn. I hope you found this video helpful. There was a lot of information jam-packed into this video, so you definitely want to rewatch some sections that are relevant to you. You should also consider seeing more of my detailed videos on specific skills on my channel on YouTube or at westcoastwingfoil.com. There, I break down the specific skills for getting you up on foil and learning all the skills and pro tips that I wish I knew when I was starting out. If you have any questions, feel free to follow us on YouTube. Leave a question in any of the comments of any of the videos. You can also join our private learning group on Facebook to share your journey and connect with others also learning to wingfoil. If you guys need gear, make sure to check out westcoastwingfoil.com. Here we only list the top boards, wings, foils, and accessories. So there is just one product in each category for you to choose from that we've deemed as the best in terms of quality, price, and performance. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and make sure to stay tuned for the next wingfoil video.